I'm Tom Barrett, and it's April the 9th, 2013, and we're in the parlor at Mackin House, and I'm here talking to Vi Johnstone and Quinn Walz. And Vi, you brought some pictures along. Do you want to show us the pictures and tell us a little bit about who's in those pictures?
Okay, this picture here is my brother and I, twins. And this is when we moved up the mountain. This is the way Mom dressed us. And you can see my brother didn't like the idea of pantaloons. but it made for a cute picture.
So up the mountain, you're talking about Burke Mountain?
Yeah. Yeah, up at the top of Coast Meridian.
Okay.
Yeah. And there was my two brothers and my two sisters. And my sister was, these two were much older than me. She was 12 years older, and she was 9 years older, and he was 7 years older. And then came Victor and I. And then my dad. I got a picture of my dad here. I didn't bring my mom. I should have. And I should probably talk about Dad. He built the house out of the bush because, and you didn't have vinyl in those days or anything like that. And you didn't have chainsaws, so you had to use crosscuts, and you used a lot of wedges and hammers. And he put the house together and he brought, of course, cut the shake bolts and split them with a furrow and a hammer and built that. And then again, I could tell you that when they did houses in those days, they didn't put a lot of stuff underneath the shakes. And we would go upstairs, and if there was a wind blowing and there was snowing, we'd get the odd flake coming through upstairs, very air conditioned, but they lasted forever, that way. Yeah, and I have a picture here also of my brother, one brother, and he's got a load of shakes on his Jeep. And that was a few years later, as you can see, because he was now getting grown up, but they were still hauling shakes, doing shakes. Even with the house we have, which I just left, was built in the 60s, and they did all the shakes for that too. Yeah. And I have a picture of my twin brother and my dad and my nephew and my brother-in-law, and that was in front of the old house. And as you can see, they did the shakes, everything was done shakes, Inside the house, no insulation. So you know what happens when you got no insulation, it gets very cold. So when we heard the fire, the airtight going in the morning, then we'd get up after the house had warmed up a bit. But I could remember Mom doing, washing the floor, and it was freezing as she was washing the floor. That's how cold it got. I think it got colder in those days anyway.
Yeah, the river used to freeze, the Fraser River.
Yeah, right? yeah, and it doesn't now. But anyway, we survived it. I mean, we all were very healthy, and we raised some goats, and we all had goat's milk, which is excellent. And Dad had some pigs, and he did his own butchering. And there's another thing that I was thinking about. He would do his own butchering, and he'd do his own curing of the bacon. And we had a back old room in this old house, and the bacon slabs would be hanging up. And when we needed a slice of bacon, we just went in there and and it lasted forever because it was cured properly. It was, thinking back on it, because doing this little interview, it made me come back to a lot of things. And of course we had our own chickens. And so Mom didn't do the killing, Dad did. But Mom did all the cleaning, and you'd only do one at a time because you didn't have a freezer, you didn't have electricity, you didn't have plumbing, you didn't have water. You had to dig a well, you know. So you packed your water in, and you had like your old stoves with the reservoir on the side to warm some water up. And yeah, there was no inside plumbing, and so you had your outside plumbing. And then you had little city folks come out. They weren't too fond of outside plumbing. They liked the idea at all. But yeah, so it was, and of course, like most people, and even prairie people, as Quinn would know, everybody did their own vegetables and stuff. They made their own bread. As a matter of fact, I have a daughter now that took a lot from Grandma, and she does her own bread and everything. She's on the prairies, and so she's, of course, putting in her gardens and stuff. And so it just followed, and she cooks like Mom did too. So, but it's a very, I don't know, it was quite an experience, and it is nice to be able to carry some of this experience. The children will never know unless it's written down, you know? So I was, and of course with this, all these old folks are all the old folks that I got to know, that knew. Everybody helped one another. And some of them were there when we came, but they didn't live right at the top. And it was an undertaking that they needed a hall to meet in. So it was down what we call Dog Patch, but what's it called now?
Victoria Drive. Victoria Drive Hall.
Okay, Victoria Drive Hall, okay. I always called it Dog Patch. Yeah, yeah. And I went to school in the old Victoria Drive School, which had a big pot-belly stove to keep, you know. And yeah, and of course Dog Patch started with gas lamps and a heater inside before, and it's much remodeled now. But you used to have your outside toilets there too. Men, women, you know. So yeah, it was quite the thing, and of course with the logging, that was done before we moved up there. But my sister knew of it because she was 12 years older, and the train came right down Harper Road, which you probably want to talk about. The railroads.
The old railroad grade that used to
Harper Road.
Crisscross the mountain.
Yeah.
Quite a long ways up the mountain is.
Yeah.
Some of the old railroad grade is still visible, but it's overgrown with timber.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you have an idea where it was, you could still kind of connect with it, how they go up to the one end and go back up the other way.
Up by the gun club, just below the gun club it used to cross. Yeah. Us kids used to walk on the trellis. It had, you know, of course come down, but we'd walk out as far as we could on it. And then there was one down Harper Road, which went all the way across the Hyde Creek and down into Martin's area. Yeah, I guess it ended up with Flavel Cedar. Huh? Wasn't the logs delivered to Flavel Cedar?
Yeah, there was quite a railroad grade towards the bottom of the mountain, but where the railroad swung over and ended up, to my understanding, it ended up at Port Moody. Huh?
Yeah. So that was quite a thing. And then the mountain got burnt off after that. A mill had burnt, and it burnt the hillside. But we moved in after that. And of course, like I say, with Mom dressing us, you know, in these little pantaloons and stuff, we certainly learnt that you didn't crawl over stumps and stuff with white clothes on. But yeah, there was a lot of little things. We also, there's the old house there, and we grew where we put in fruit trees. And we would pick that fruit and take it to Colony Farm, and they would can it, the cannery, when they had the cannery there, you know, to feed the patients up above. And my dad, for the first while, was on what they called relief, right? It was like a welfare, but it was a relief. They worked for it. They dug ditches all down Coast Meridian, you know what I mean? Everybody had to work for the money they got. And then he worked longshoring. And then my mom didn't drive, so that made her very confined to home, which, I mean, she had enough to do anyway with the vegetables and with the animals and whatnot. Yeah, so it was, then he worked for a while at Colony Farm. He looked after the horses there before the barns burnt and the horses were burned. Yeah. So it's been a lot of little things have you think back on once in a while, and like I say, you kind of hope that people will put something down. Like this truck, I would imagine maybe you've already got it in your pictures, but that was Mom's really bright day of the week. That was Mr. Lizzie would come with his groceries in a truck. And she could go out and do her shopping, right?
At the door.
He was from Millardville. Yeah, he was from Millardville, and he'd come out there. This was in the later years, though. But I mean, she'd say, "Oh, he's coming today. I must mark down what I need for my groceries." It was her grocery shopping, you know. And I happened to go through some stuff, and I come across the picture of Mr. Lizzie's truck, you know. Yeah. So the people in Millardville here would recognize Lizzie, of course. I mean,
Would be probably one of his sons was Giles Lizzie. He's an accountant. Huh?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I haven't seen him for quite a number of years now.
yeah.
So what sort of stuff would your mom buy from Mr. Lizzie?
Oh, she would buy, well, she'd make her own butter.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, she'd buy different staples that she needed, flour and stuff like that, because she baked. Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, when she baked, this is something that maybe people would think gross, but how did he say that you say when you kill a bear? There was a name for it. You didn't call them killing a bear.
Slaughtered.
Ever. And anyway, they ate the bear meat. I mean, it wasn't like they were just killing them. And she would render down the fat, and she would make pies, like cherry pie. You could see the cherries through the crust. That's what bear fat did for your pastry. Oh yeah, there was a lot of little things that came along. These Gillis brothers, they lived partway down the hill below us, and they brought in golden seal and ginseng, the herbs that they sell to China.
Uh-huh.
And my brother used to go down and dig the golden seal for them because they just used the roots of that. And it was quite interesting because they cut all the strips of, because with ginseng it has to be covered to a certain extent when you're growing it. And all those little strips of cedar were all I would imagine he must have had over an acre of all those little strips sheltering the ginseng. And it was on levels, it was on in like tables. They put a lot of work into it, I must say. Yeah, and they sold it to China. That was years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there somebody locally here they would sell it to? Who would ship
I don't know how they shipped it. I don't know, because I know Les would go down and they would, and they'd have to wash it and prepare it to go. Yeah. So that was quite, and everything was kept quiet sort of about it. It was like he got something that was good and he wasn't going to allow anybody else to take over this, So yeah, it was very good. The way we had the road put through past us was Fletcher started logging up the mountain, and they needed to gravel the Coast Meridian. And so they came past our place and went in down into the end of Coast Meridian is what we always called the gravel pit. And that's where they brought their gravel out of. So we managed to get a pretty good road from them logging. And then back to this picture, this Mr. Cross with his little beard and mustache, he was the one that volunteered to come down to the dog patch, to the dances, to light the gas lamps. That was his job. And Dan would be the guy at the door to take the monies when you came in to dance. And he'd come down in his Model A, you know. Yeah, it was, Mr. George Martin, they lived, well, there was a Millards first that came, and then George Martin married a Millard, and so they moved up a little ways farther, and they also farmed. But they farmed they had the farm on one side of Hyde Creek, and their house was on the other. And she would go down to, again, no power, she'd go down to the creek, way down to the gully, and do her wash down there, which we wouldn't allow it now. You're polluting the water, lady. But anyway, she would wash her clothes down there and hang them up down there. And then go back home. She'd done her wash in the creek water. You know, it was...
Their home was right at the end of Highland Drive before it was down to Hyde Creek. And in the olden days, there was the road going down and then a little wooden bridge crossing Hyde Creek.
Yes, there was. Yeah.
And the Martin Orchard was on the west side of Hyde Creek, between the ridge between the Hyde Creek and the
Coquitlam River,
where it drops off quite steep down to the river. And a lot of the old fruit trees are still there, but they've been neglected, and they just, some of them are still alive, but that's about it. They produce nothing because they've...
Most of those, and also one of the Millards, Bill, he was a recluse. He was, preferred to be on his own, but he lived on the same property, and he made violins. And I kicked myself today why we didn't get one of his violins, because he made them right out of whatever he could find to whittle them out. Yeah, and he preferred to be on his own. And nobody bothered him. And they had strawberries, and we all helped pick strawberries, We did a lot of picking of fruit and stuff in our day. I'm just I shouldn't be looking at that, I suppose, but once in a while I have to look at this because it's a few years back.
No problem.
But yeah, there was a lot of little things that of course we walked a lot. You know what I mean? We weren't able to be drove everywhere. And I know with Mom, anybody that came to the house, in those days you didn't lock your house. And anybody that came to the house, I never knew who Mom would have invited in for tea and something, Yeah. She did a lot of that. She had invited everybody. It didn't matter who they were. They would all come in to have their tea.
I was going to ask you mentioned the airtight. What was that?
An airtight?
Yeah.
And they're a tin heater. And boy, when they get hot, they glow. I have scars on my knees because we used to get so cold, and we get up against the air and it goes, and it's got you. Yeah, round ones. Yeah.
Fairly thin metal, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when the fire was in, that went right through the middle in a hurry, huh? It wasn't a big cast iron stove. It was just an airtight heater, huh?
Yeah.
And most of them just had a lid on top.
Yes.
And pipe.
The pipe went right out through the roof.
Yeah.
Nobody worried about asbestos or anything to stop anything from. I think they just put tin around.
Yeah, and and the pipe itself heated as smoke was going out. The pipes also heated the house.
Was that the only source of heat in the house? Was that
Yeah,
heat in
yeah,
the
oh yeah,
house?
nothing underneath.
Well,
We had our cook stove.
The cook stoves, they were all fired by wood, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
And the reservoirs,
Yeah.
and then they also had a warming off.
Yes, we did. Mom used to raise her bread at the up there in the
Yeah.
warming oven.
Yeah, it was built up over the top of the main stove with just like a little cupboard up there. Only it was all metal.
I think they have one here, don't you?
I think they do.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that one I noticed.
Whether it had
Warming
up on
tub.
top, it has a reservoir, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Mom was made when we moved into the other house. My mother, yeah, they did. Poor Mom. She made the bread, and then she thought, well, what's wrong with this thing? The light's coming on, and the light's going off, and then she realized, and she said, I can't make good bread in an electric stove. And the old house hadn't been torn down yet. And she went out there and she got that fire going in the wood stove, and she said, now that's a proper loaf of bread. So I don't think she ever liked the electric stove.
I remember that. I got a phone call.
Huh?
I got a phone call. Is it really like
Yeah, I phoned you. Yeah. Well, we had to learn a lot of things. It was the same when the people moved. This was after Sieberts had passed away, and then different people had moved in. And these people, they didn't have a clue how to open up your lanterns, your coal oil lanterns. And so I had to go over and show them how you opened it, because they were trying desperately to get in to light it.
Yeah.
And you had to pull the thing down to lift the bulb.
chimney.
Yeah. And so, there was a lot of things. Over there, they had a chicken fall in a well, had no idea how to get it out, and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, but people coming and not really realizing what they're getting into, if they've been used to, or never had to do any of this stuff. And of course, we were raised in it, So it was, yeah.
So if a chicken falls in a well, how do you get it out?
Well, we used a bucket. We put the bucket down, a big bucket, and just kept working. She finally wanted refuge into the bucket. She wanted to jump onto something to get out of there.
Yeah.
So it was a dry well.
Oh.
So yeah, I guess it was one that not Chutneys, it was, maybe it was Chutneys that had all the problems when they moved in.
Who was there before then?
There was Sieberts, we met.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, no, there was different, Allgairs were there. And it was a lot of,
Dorothy somebody.
oh, Pierce's.
Pearson.
Yeah. And yeah, there was a lot of different people moved in there, but Pierce's were older, and so they had been used to a lot of that sort of thing. Yeah. But yeah, it was a nice life and a very clean air, I must say. Not as clean anymore.
I'll bet. Yeah.
No. Even a little house I got down here. One day I said to one of the fellows, I said, somebody's gas tank must be leaking, because they were fixing it up for my husband because he needed a ramp and he needed, all different things. And so they're fixing it up for him. And I said, somebody's gas must be leaking. Then I realized it wasn't that. it was all those cars going by that were so close. You know, because we'd come from up the hill where there was trees all around. Well, I got lots of trees behind me, but thank goodness. And I don't smell anything at the back of my place because I bought an old place. You know, it's built in the 70s, 72.
In Port Coquitlam.
In Port Coquitlam now, down on Oxford. And so I made sure I got an old house so that I had a big lot so I could put a little garden in, and I brought all my flowers down from my old homestead. So I'm quite content now. I wasn't at first, you know, because you don't live in one place for so long and you get pretty used to it, you know.
You farm too.
Huh?
Tell the farm you have.
Yeah, well, we've always had animals, and I've ended up with, of course, when I married, Mom was still there with us, and then I started with sheep, but we've had everything. We've had horses and cows, and ended up with sheep, and showed the kids how to show sheep and stuff like that. You know, I ran a 4-H club for many years. Yeah. So it's been an experience, and I've enjoyed the whole trip. It's getting a little scary now, though, I must say, but I think I'll get myself another dog. I think that's what we need now.
You mentioned killing a bear. How often did that happen?
Fruit time. Fruit time. It was when they would insist on getting into the plum trees. I know, I've had it since I've been up there, you know what I mean. It's been, I've actually had them on my back porch, and I'd tell the kids, the little guys, this last year there was 3 with one mom, and she sends the 3 kids up onto my deck, and I say, you have to leave, where's your mom? Because I've lived with them, you know what I mean? And so they'd go down the steps, and there would be Mom.
Yeah.
And I'd say, you've got to go too. And over they go. You know, it's been an experience with the whole thing, you know. Coyotes I didn't care too much for, but, and cougars, with our goats, we had quite a flock of goats. And because I think Mom probably gave away a lot of the goat's milk, because I know we drank a lot of it, and she made cottage cheese and butter. Goat butter wasn't my thing, but it looks very much like lard. So you get that feeling of lard. Yeah, it was, we had quite a group of goats, and one night, we, of course, having no power, no lights, no nothing, my dad was a good shot. And anyway, he heard the commotion out there, and they had in the meantime killed most of the goats. And she was teaching her babies how to do it, which is what they do. But normally a cougar will kill a flock. It's not like a coyote. A coyote kill one, but a cougar will kill as much as he can. And anyway, my dad went out and he saw the object against the goat, and he shot her. He got her. But at that time, there was a bounty, you know, on them. But he never got the cubs. But then we didn't have the goats anymore either, except my one goat. And so I had one goat, and that was my goat. And so we kept her, but then after that we got a cow and, you know, stuff. So it was like, and as my kids got older, one had to have a horse. Of course, that's me. I wanted the horse, so I had to make an excuse for it, right? So I let her have foals. But yeah, it was quite an experience, and I don't imagine too many will get that experience of all the different things, of the farming and of the, you know, everything is just so modernized now, and actually they don't know what they're missing, you know. Well, Quinn would know that. He's from the prairies, and so he's gone through a lot and saw a lot, and he knows it. Young kids would never put up with that nowadays. Not too much. Not unless they're raised on it.
They can't they can't believe what we're telling them because a lot of things are so unrelated to today's living. Huh?
It is. It is. You know, they buy all their prepared foods and stuff. And I'm sure when we ever mentioned about eating bear meat, the kids just turn inside out. but my husband actually liked bear meat. You're not supposed to be eating bear meat, though, because my mother always preached to us that you only eat things that have a cloven foot, like your deer and your moose and all this stuff, but not a pad.
Huh? Not a clawed
Yeah.
animal. Huh?
And we were taught that, but Dad still went out and got his bear. He shot one time, though, that when we had the goats, she had a baby, and she had the afterbirth, and the bear came, and Dad spotted him, and Dad was so sick at the time because he had cancer, and he had to lay his gun on a stump and shoot the bear, and the bear was feeding herself with her foot because the whole lower jaw had been blown away at some point, and it had healed, but she couldn't eat that way. She had no bottom jaw. And that's what Dad noticed about her. She was trying to feed herself with her paw. So, yeah, so she would have died anyway, but yeah, and he got her. Yeah, because she could have been, I guess, she couldn't have done much damage to you except raking you with her claws, I suppose. You know, but that would be about it. She couldn't have done much. She didn't have any teeth left, you know. Yeah, that was one of the experiences. There was lots of them, but not all of them I can remember, but I do know that our house was cold, and yeah. But, you know, they didn't, of course, I guess, I don't know why they didn't put insulation in, but then I guess they didn't have, no insulation, I know, but some of these old houses have paper.
Yes, and a lot of them had sawdust in the walls. So when sawdust became readily available.
Yeah.
Yeah, the walls were filled with sawdust. Yeah, it did help, huh?
Yeah, I could see it too, I guess, but well, yeah, because the sawdust did come in because I delivered papers for that whole hillside, which you walked for miles because they didn't have, you know, you walk down roads to get to one house, you know. And I delivered papers, and Millard's were one of them that I delivered to, and Mr. Millard had his sawdust bin by Coast Meridian, where Millard Road is now.
Yeah.
He had his shed there had his sawdust in. But we never did have sawdust. We just had the wood. Well, of course, because of the little heater, too, you had to have, you know, your little heater had to have good wood in it, too.
Yeah, and when sawdust became quite readily available, a lot of people had sawdust burners on their stoves. They had
Dangerous.
a big hopper, you know, and you'd fill that hopper with sawdust, and it would feed into the fire, huh? And yeah, you had to be careful with that too.
Sure do, because my mother was babysitting my older sister's youngster, and she was babysitting, and she didn't know too much about sawdust. You know, she's a wood person. And anyway, I guess whatever she was doing, I don't know why, but it blew back and scared her so bad that she said, well, they can do without their breakfast. Because it was, I guess, quite because sparks, you know, everything flies, you know. Yeah, they can be very combustible.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got the fur with the pitch, you know, within it.
Yeah, yeah.
It burned quite readily, huh?
Because I remember you used to say on the prairies, when times were bad, you just fed whatever you could to the cattle or whatever. Remember, you were talking about it. I think you were feeding them straw or whatever. Of course,
Well,
yeah.
straw, yeah.
Of course, straw is.
Hay and whatever we could grow
Yeah,
for feed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's times.
Speaking about cold weather and the prairies, I don't know if you ever did it, but we used to bank up the house in the wintertime, huh?
With snow?
Huh? First of all with paper there and then manure from the barn, huh?
Oh, that would heat nice.
Huh?
That would heat nice.
Well, it would keep the cellars
Yeah.
warm enough from freezing your vegetables, which
Yeah,
we used to
yeah.
have down below in the hole
Yeah.
under the house.
That was a good idea. I'll have to tell Janice about that one.
So
Yeah.
when did you move to Coquitlam?
I came to Coquitlam in 1958 and lived over Burt Mountain area ever since. But I originally came from Saskatchewan during the war, first to Victoria and worked there. And then when the shipyards closed down, my dad moved to Port Alberni. And of course, in the winter time for years, whoever could get away from the prairies came out to the coast and worked over winter. And in the spring of the year, we'd go back to the farm. And there was always, from 11 children, there were always some
11
capable of the younger ones that could look after the family and the farm. And we'd come out to the coast here and work over winter, and in the spring go back and work on our farm. Yeah, and of course, growing up in the Depression, everyone was in pretty dire straits in those days. So whenever you could earn extra money, that's what we did. And that's how our dad came out to the coast, because during the Depression years, nobody had anything, and especially if you had a big family, you
Very
had
hard.
to go where you could work. And then when the war broke out, there was lots of work at the coast here. And so Dad and my older sister and brother, they came out to the coast first. And Mother and the rest of us stayed and worked at home on the farm. Yeah, and that's how we eventually all settled out here at the coast. And down the road, first of all, leased out. I had a quarter section of my own that I leased it out, and then eventually I sold it.
This
And
was
so,
on Burke Mountain?
No.
no, that was in Saskatchewan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Got a Burke Mountain here.
yeah. But when I came to Burke Mountain in '58, we actually bought a piece of property on Harper Road. Today, it's right on the switchback where I don't know if you're familiar with Harper Road and the gun club.
Vaguely.
Well, up
You
in
never
that-
know it when you go up there now anyway, but
And now there's, it was used as a excess dirt dump, and Westbuild have built up the whole property up there, and up on top there they've got a little reservoir or
yeah,
a holding
yeah,
pond
yeah.
up on top of this property. But we had that property, I guess 8-10 years or so, and then we sold it. And of course, now today,
Yeah,
it's practically all houses below, up to Harper Road.
if you love a lot of houses.
Oh,
But Mr.
There's
Harper
hundreds.
used to live up there
Yeah.
on his property.
yeah.
And we used to have sometimes a little laugh with him. He was kind of a cantankerous fellow. And he had a wife, and I never did know what happened to her, but He had a motorbike with a sidecar, and she used to ride in the sidecar. And away they'd go down the hill. Every once in a while, he'd decide to close off Harper Road, because that was his road.
Huh?
Well, we did a few Halloween jokes on him too, but we used to do some bad Halloween jokes. That woman is in Saskatchewan now.
What did you do? What kind of jokes?
Oh, it was bad. He had a beautiful white gate he put up. Dorothy says, "We're going to fix this." And so she heated up her black paint, painted it black. He was not happy. And when, just below us, across the street from us, they had well, you might as well say a trail. It was big enough for a car to go through. See, Hazel Drive wasn't there. And then they finally got broke through. But people down below that used to be called Costa Vista.
Oh,
Yeah, it was McClements, and a lot of different people lived down there at that time. But when we were speaking about Halloween, there was Hudnuts that used to drink. They were always with their Model A stuck in the middle of the road when you try to get around them. But anyway, they came home from their little spree, and Dorothy and I had worked diligently, hours, with a crosscut. And we cut a big tree down, and we laid it, and it went right down their road. They came home, and Bill told me after, we thought we'd got lost in the bush somewhere. But when they got home, we had nailed boards across their front door, which, they were just old houses, and it put "Gone for the Winter." She said, "We knew it had to be you guys that were up to something." Yeah. Anyway. Most of them aren't alive today, so I won't get reprimanded for that one. No.
My father used to hang out with them guys.
Yeah. Cut it.
Where I moved up there a year before Quinn. I was moved up there in April. And where I lived used to be a mink farm.
Yeah, Holtz. But anyway, I knew the people. They had the first television, by the way.
Who, Walz?
Yep.
Is that right?
We all had to go and take a look at this strange box. He's got it on now, hasn't he?
Let's hear about that strange box.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we used to sit at home and in front of a battery little old radio and listen to "I Love a Mystery." We had used our own imagination while we were sitting there, right? And then I got to think back as to there was something we used to do. Oh, it was Mom used to make sauerkraut, and she'd have this big wooden barrel. And I remember she had a dealie that was across it. They just shred it all into the barrel, and you have your big leaf over top and then a rock on top. Your salt in there too. But anyway, in the winter, we ate it like candy. We had it outside, and it would start to freeze, right? And we'd go out there with our bowls, and we'd fill a bowl with sauerkraut. You'd think they're thirsty after, but I mean, we ate it like ice cream. Because we didn't have ice cream too often, because we had no electricity and had no fridges. Because your family must have made sauerkraut.
Oh, yeah. Everybody did, huh?
Yeah,
Always
yeah.
had a big
Yeah.
barrel of sauerkraut
Really enjoyed
in the
it.
winter.
I haven't had any since because my husband didn't like sauerkraut, so I guess that put an end to that one. Yeah. So you've got dead silence.
So you
Were you
said
making out with your
went
notes?
to Victoria Drive School, was that right?
Yes, I did. I went to Victoria Drive School. We walked down, and we only had one teacher for all the grades because there wasn't that many kids. And my sister that was 12 years old 12 years older, she went there too. And then we ended up going to the old Glen School on Glen Drive. And then that burnt down and they built a new one. And that one burnt down and we went back to old one. Beautiful, yeah. But anyway, and then off to Millardville to go to school.
That's quite a long trip.
Well, we went by bus, yeah, but it was a long day. Especially when you come home and you do the papers. Then your homework by coil lamps. You know, I'm surprised we still have eyesight. Yeah. But yeah, but we, you know, it's like, actually, people would say it was the good old days. Now we're wondering whether it was the good old days, but I'm beginning to think it was.
Well, we had fun.
Huh?
We had fun.
Yeah, we had clean fun, and when we had to, and my dad used to make those stilts, you know, and we'd walk with these stilts. And then we'd play tag on the maple trees, and we'd go from one maple, we'd like monkeys. We used to swing from one maple tree to the other. The one to hit the ground was the first one, you know, you're out, right? Well, we're a bunch of idiots, but we did find our own.
You made your own fun.
Yeah, we found our own fun. Yeah, kick the can and all that kind of stuff, yeah. No, but the kids now sit with their little fingers going, and I'm sure all their children are going to be born with big thumbs. I don't know, it's unreal, really it is. Because, you know, I think that we probably were a lot healthier. You know, we have always had to work. Like, my dad was a strict one on that one. Whenever we heard that car coming home from work, boy, nobody was sitting. You better be moving. You know? Not that he was mean, but he did not like to see anybody sitting around when there was work to be done, right? And I think you sort of get drilled into it, you know. Takes you a long time to, because I mean, you know, I farmed right up until, 7 years ago now. My family, my daughter married a sheep farmer and took all my sheep and went to Manitoba with them. So it's a little harder on them, but she married a sheep farmer, so his sheep are used to the Manitoba. But she had to make sure she bought a barn for mine because they weren't going down there or built a barn for mine. Yeah. So it's a tough life for them too, I guess. It's still snowing down there, so, and very cold. Yeah, they've all learned to do their lambing and whatnot. The other one has sheep in Penderallen. Yeah. It's addictive. Once you have a certain animal, that's what they were raised with, so.
You get emotionally tied to them, huh?
You do.
Huh?
You do.
Yeah.
You do, yeah.
Quirin?
Yeah.
Well,
Barb's, you had 4 lambs.
Huh?
Barb's, you had 4
Yeah,
lambs.
we have Barb's, ewe lambed yesterday, and she had 4 babies.
over a Salt Spring.
So you know where she's got the 2? She took 2 away from her because she's an older lady, right? She has them in her bathroom.
Yeah. But she lives on
Where they can keep nice and clean and warm, and she's right there where she's working her office, and then check the other animals, and then go back, and she's got 100 acres over there. So
that's her daughter in.
no, this was Barb on Pender. Yeah.
Over in Pender Isle, not in
Yeah.
Manitoba. This one.
I have a city slicker. She lives here in Fort Coquitlam. She lives in Fort Coquitlam. Yeah, she's not the farmer. No.
So we're just about out of time. Is there anything more you want to say? Or
No, I
anything
think
about
I've talked enough. I thought I wouldn't be able to talk for that long, but I have a big
You've
mouth.
covered quite a lot of history of your life and that.
Yeah.
And the railroad,
Yeah.
the Logan Railroad.
Yeah.
And then the people that lived down, it was the old New Uranus place, right? Across the border from Port Coquitlam on Coast Meridian Road. There was a big old house in there.
Yeah,
It was
it was the bunkhouse.
from the logging company, yeah.
Yeah, they stayed in there. As a matter of fact, I did an inspection of it once because he against was a recluse that lived there now. Well, I used to bring home feed for his sheep, and I did a tour of the place. Excellent. It was a big dining room, and they fed the men, you know, through an opening, you know, in the big dining area. Yeah, and then there was the levels with the with the balconies. That was built in 1902. That building. It's down now. It's all houses.
Yeah.
Nobody ever thought of it as a heritage house or anything.
Well, some people did, but
It didn't help.
oh no, we didn't get any cooperation from the establishment here in Millardville. Huh?
Yeah.
So, oh no, we can't.
It was too bad because it had all outside pipes instead of inside cast outside
Yeah,
and stuff. It was well built.
it was a
Well-built home.
house, a very
Yeah.
well-built house.
And Mr. Jones died after he got the roofs on. He got how many sections there? I went up and seen how he was doing it
Huh?
when he would put the new roofs on
Yeah,
because it was high and he was,
Camper there.
huh?
We built our camper at his house.
yeah, there's been a lot of changes on the hill.
Was there?
My sister and brother-in-law and I, we had a little road construction company, had a couple of bulldozers and dump truck and that. And we put in a lot of the new streets in Coquitlam there. Darwin was one that subdivided, the sheep farmer, as we call him, Newt Jonas.
Yeah.
He subdivided his, what did he have, 40 acres in there?
Oh, must have been.
I think it was a whole
Yeah.
block there.
Yeah.
And we put in a lot of those roads, and put one through street in Port Coquitlam, where we had bought 5 acres as well, and put in Green Mound. And then Wellington. We put in Wellington on the west side of Mr. Jernus's property, put that road in. And then we put in Glenbrook Street, where we now live. And then there were a few other streets that we put in a little bit further east. There was Roxton, and further off of Victoria Drive, we put in quite a stretch of road there. And of course, now it's all being redeveloped and houses, yeah.
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 Because we've been on that property for 51 years where we live now.
Where we live now, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
51 years, September the 21st.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen a lot of changes in the area.
I see it when
But-
I just
but
drive
I've
anywhere
seen
now.
more, well, I've
Yeah.
seen more.
I never saw
lived-
too much at first.
Huh?
I never saw too much at first
Huh?
because it was only going slow,
Huh?
you know?
Yeah.
Now I can go down. I used to go down. I said to my husband, I said, I don't care to go down anymore because I said there's going to be another house gone and it's going to be another house put up, and they put up so fast, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, it's a big change in the area.
Yeah.
And of course, speaking of the Millards, we have finally got the
Millard
little park named after the Millard family, Millard Orchard Park.
Yeah, because they didn't want to do it at first.
Oh, no, they
Because they said it would mingle with, they would get mixed up with Millard.
Millardville, huh?
You know, and it was a shame because they'd been there for so
They
many
were
years, you
pioneers
know.
in the area.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
And the boys, like, there was quite a few boys, and they worked in Ioko and whatnot. The boys, Bert and
Yeah.
Gus and whatnot, they all worked in Ioko at the refinery.
and then
Yeah.
there were the McConnells. Mrs. McConnell was a Millard, huh?
Yeah, And Mrs. Martin was a Millard.
Mrs. Martin was a Millard, and Mrs. Petrie was a Millard, you know. And they all have family in the area.
Yeah. So yeah. And Harper they wanted to give up too. They wanted to change that to Gamache, and I thought, my God, Gamache has never been. He's been a counselor.
Huh?
He lived there for a little bit.
Yeah, but not long enough. Harper was always up there. Yeah.
Gamache, somehow, Conifer Drive, way
Yes, I know.
way up Harper.
His house burnt, didn't it?
Huh?
His house
I
burnt,
don't
didn't
know. But anyway, that Conifer Drive is one of the old railroad spurs, huh? And
Yeah, it's remarkable because we had one run behind the house, behind our property. And I even had some of the, well, when you dig in the garden, spikes from the railroad spikes. Yeah, yeah. But you know, you never thought of it as being something that you should hold on to, or like I see in here with your stove, you've got a sad iron, which we always used. You know, the flat iron that you can have a bunch of them, one heating, you got to put a handle on them, and you have to be very careful that you don't scorch stuff or have it to be rust on the bottom. I know, I saw that in there on that stove, which brought back memories. Yeah. But you see, everything went for scrap, I guess. Yeah, never thinking. Actually, probably kids should be holding on to stuff now that's going to be antique when it's their age, but...
well, there's the right behind McConnell's old place where Pat Macy lived.
Yeah,
There's a whole pile of, it's gone now, but of old cable, from the heavy cable in the olden days when they had the steam donkeys and that yarding the logs together.
yeah, yeah.
Well, the old cable was just when it got
And it rusts to
frayed
rot,
and
yeah,
it was just left in the bush. Huh?
yeah.
And actually, there was a chunk of railroad iron in there as well. Huh?
Yeah.
So, but it's all gone now, and there's new houses there.
Yeah, yeah. No one would know, except Dr. Friesen now is going to put a plaque in on his property there with the train and what that the train did go through here.
Yeah.
You know, because no one would. They'd think you're just pulling their leg.
Yeah. So.
Okay, I think that's...
Yeah, I think we can. I think we can quit now.